Hey folks, welcome to week 12 of User Experience and Interface Design. How is everybody? Hope you all doing well, keeping busy, and being productive. Okay, so this week we're continuing along from last week where you put together your wireframes and get ready for some usability testing, which you should have been working on over the weekend or even before that. So let's take a look at the syllabus and we'll see where we're at as we work our way through Project 2. Okay, so over here on the syllabus, normally under week 12, we would have met April 13th, 15th, and 17th. And so today, of course, is April 13th, and we're going to go over what we're going to do for the week, as well as where we came from last week in week 11. Okay, so last week, you guys had posted all of your completed imagery that you're going to use in your DIY website, whether you're using photos, illustrations, or whatnot. I've given you guys feedback on all of those already. A lot of them looked really good, so nice job on that. Do make sure that you are formatting all of those images exactly the same. If they're all going to be square, make them all squares. If they're all going to be horizontal or vertical rectangles, then be sure to do that so that they look consistent for your website prototype. Okay, then your homework last week was to work on paper to create your site outline, your site map, and a collection of wireframes, just like we did for Project 1. So same sort of idea, you know what you're doing, and you should have used the paper wireframes to get together 3 people, probably remotely, maybe not in person, given the circumstances and all, and do your usability testing, your user testing. And hopefully you remembered to review the handout from the week 3 folder, what is usability testing, to make sure that you were going through all the needed steps to complete your usability testing and put together a document or presentation of your findings. So hopefully that all went smoothly. Hope you were able to get people to do some usability testing for you. Now on to week 12. So the results of your usability testing, your write-up or your presentation of the results of your usability testing is due today on the 13th. If you go back to Canvas and take a look under assignments, you'll see that Project 2 Part 3, which is the usability testing, is due April 13th, so that's today. So be sure to get that in as soon as you can today if you haven't already. Okay, so back to the week. So you've turned in the usability testing results. I will take a look at them. I'll go over them. I'll give you some feedback. I'm sure they all went well. Now, you might have noticed that it also said to work on names for your site. I sort of skipped over that last week because I wanted you to really focus on the usability testing, but we're going to get back to that this week along with doing a basic logo design for your site. Now, we're not spending a lot of time on this. I just want you to spend sort of just one day this week coming up with a fun and pertinent name for your do-it-yourself website, and just working on a really basic logo for it. This is not a branding class. We are not doing a full branding suite. We don't have time for that. Just a little something that we can add to the website prototype to give it a little bit of personality, right? Now, when we're talking about logos and names, again, we're going to keep them simple. I generally look toward graphic designer Aaron Draplin, who you may or may not be familiar with, for great examples of really simple logo designs. He's sort of a master of blocky, easy to put together, simplistic, vector-based logos. So something like this that might make sense for your website. And if you look online, you can find, if you look under Aaron Draplin logos, you can find sort of process graphics like this that he puts out. These are the steps he shows in going through developing a logo, but you'll notice that they're just simple shapes put together in a program like Illustrator. So for example, let's say that your do-it-yourself website was about how to bake chocolate chip cookies, right? One of my favorite things in the world. You could start out with an Illustrator file and simply start with a circle, right? Something super easy, and give it sort of a nice wide stroke width, right? Logos tend to work really nicely if they sort of feel like stickers that you can just pick up and move around anywhere. And then, of course, add some chips to it. Now, of course, we could make other circles, but we probably want them to be kind of a little more amorphic. So, you know, using the pen tool, we can just kind of do something like that and reverse the color and simply use that as our basis and then just start duplicating them, right? Use that universal drag and drop feature for duplicate. And of course, once you've duplicated them, you can kind of resize some of them, squish them a little bit so they don't all feel like the same chip, as it were. Little rotation, a little stretching and squishing, right? Kind of shrink it down a little bit. Grab it again, rotate it. And you know, something real simple that would just sort of say, hey, I'm teaching you how to make chocolate chip cookies. Like pretty straightforward stuff. And whatever it is you're teaching us, I'm sure you can come up with a pretty simple graphic for it that could be used. And boom, done, logo. So that's literally how much time I want you to spend on this. Is just put together a simple graphic that represents visually in an iconic form what it is you're trying to teach us. And then you need a name for the site, right? You know, 10 easy steps to making chocolate chip cookies is not super exciting and probably a little long. You know, so it could be something as simple as, you know, let's just block this out here. The how to cookie site. You know, just literally come up with a name that is pretty straightforward and maybe have a little fun with it. You know, before we dive headlong into building our site prototype, which is, you know, serious work and going to take a good amount of time, you know, let's have a little bit of fun with the naming and the logo. Something that we can kind of put onto our website. And so, you know, in a matter of minutes, boom, instant logo, instant site name. And of course, you can add color or whatnot. Now, the nice thing about this is that once you are done with this, because it's a vector, and remember, Adobe XD is also a vector program, you can easily just lasso everything you've made in Illustrator, group it together, right? Just doing Command G or go to Object Group, and then simply copy it, Command C, and then paste it right into your Adobe XD file, and then you'll be ready to roll. So that is the main goal for this week. While I am giving you guys feedback on your usability testing results, you're going to go ahead and come up with a fun name for your site and design a really simple logo for it. So that's your goal this week, okay? Now, that is going to get turned in next week, along with your visual elements library, which is your homework. So let's talk a little bit about what that is. So you'll see here under homework, complete logo, and of course come up with your name for your site, but then you're going to begin designing a visual elements library of common elements that will appear on your site. What the heck does that mean? What's a visual elements library? Well, under the Project 2 folder, you will find an example of a visual elements library, and I'm going to show it to you here. This is what it looks like. Now, yours doesn't have to look exactly like this, but all a visual elements library is, and you can do this in Illustrator, which again, because Adobe XD is a vector program, it makes sense to make the majority of your graphics in Illustrator and then simply copy and paste them into Adobe XD. So all a visual elements library is, it's a collection of items that are going to appear on your website and that will most likely be repeated. Now, some of them are styling elements, like for example over here. Let me zoom in a little here so we can see what we are doing. Over here we have the color palette. That is going to be represented in this particular website's example. Here in this visual elements library, they're calling these global items, meaning that they appear all over the website. So you might want to establish a color palette for your website. That's probably a good idea. You don't need a ton of colors. This site here is using both a primary palette and a secondary palette. You probably just need a primary palette. And you'll notice that they're just giving examples of each, using simple squares, and of course putting the hexadecimal code for what each one is. And remember, of course, you can get the hexadecimal codes in Illustrator simply by choosing an item like this chip and double-clicking on the color picker. And you'll see that at the bottom here is the hexadecimal code for whatever your colors are. So you can put that in. You can also put in the RGB formula if you want, which you can also get from the color picker, RGB, right? So however you want to denote that, either using the hexadecimal code or the RGB or both, would be super useful. And then the other item, of course, is the fonts that you're going to use in your website. Do some research, toy around with a bunch of different fonts. Remember, keep it to a minimum. I would say pick 2 fonts that each have a number of type styles built into them, and use that for your do-it-yourself website. One font could be slightly more decorative and use that for your headers or your titles, and then one can be less decorative and use that for your descriptions and your step-by-step instructions, the areas that need to be more readable. So pick out a couple of fonts. You'll see here that it says the name of the font as well as shows it in different sizes. All you really need to do is show us the name of the font and an example of what it looks like. And then the rest of the elements in your visual elements library, sometimes referred to as a style guide, will be if you're going to use any buttons, for example, on your site, right, to move people from one step to the next. You can design some simple buttons and put those in there. If you are going to use any sort of pop-up graphics like these, any other sort of buttons or whatnot, any flags like this, anything that you think would be useful in helping your user navigate from one step of your of the thing you're trying to teach them to the next step. Whatever you can come up with. It does not have to be super elaborate. You'll notice that these are basically simple shapes, rectangles with triangles attached to them is pretty much the norm here, and it also shows the colors of how they are, as well as simple buttons, right? Which you can make with rounded rectangles, regular rectangles, and you can pretty much have some fun with them, but make sure that they're consistent. By creating this visual elements library, it gives you sort of a repository for all the graphics, as well as a reminder of what fonts you're going to use and your color picker, your color palette, so that when you get into Adobe XD and start building the actual site prototype, you can keep Illustrator open with this visual elements library and just simply copy paste all the elements you need into XD, so it makes the building of the site much more easy. Okay, so I hope that's clear. So just to recap, you've turned in your usability testing results due today on the 13th. I will review them and give you feedback. Then you're going to spend one day this week just coming up with a name for your site and coming up with a really simple logo, something like this perhaps, something really basic. And then you're going to start building your visual elements library, which is just your color palette, the fonts you're going to use, and a collection of any graphics that'll be used on your website that will be that will repeat themselves throughout the whole website. So that's the goal for this week. Pretty straightforward. All right, if you have any questions or concerns, of course, shoot me an email, or if you just want to say hi. Also, be sure to take advantage of my online office hours. They are listed in announcements. I've got one coming up soon. You'll see Professor Brevitt's online office hours in announcements. I'll be running one every week, so if you want to poke in on video to say hi, or if you have any questions, that'd be great too. All right, everybody take care of yourselves, be safe, and I'll talk to you soon.